Hey everyone. So there's so much misunderstanding regarding spirituality that this video had to be created. Before we dive into what spirituality is, we need to cover our bases, but this is basically covering the groundwork of what I'm going to be creating on this channel. It's going to be basically spiritual videos, so yeah. But most of you don't know what that means because of the misconception, so I need to make this video to clear that up. So anyway, many aspects of spirituality can arise in awareness, such as meditation, chakras, auras, energy work, tarot cards, mantras, rituals, among many other aspects. These are simply tools, but they're not spirituality itself. So what is spirituality actually? Well, spirituality is a being's search for meaning, purpose, and connection to self, other world, God, nature, and always generally towards something greater than the everyday autopilot, sleeping, normal ego consciousness, right? So, spirituality is just the recognition there's more to existence than mundane concerns, biological drives, and predictable surface kind of pleasures, right?
But, as you well know, appearances can be deceiving, which brings me back to the reason why we're here.
It involves cultivating awareness, fundamentally, which is the focus of the book I finished writing recently for the readers. I was writing with the intent to increase people's awareness. That's basically what it was all about. I had very little interest in telling people what to do, as that becomes pretty obvious in line with the truth discovered after you cultivate the appropriate amount of awareness as well. So the book will be out sometime this year. Stay tuned. It'll be out soon, I'm sure. Anyway, awareness as the divine, the Tao, the ground of being, or simply the interconnectedness of all things is required to reach higher consciousness. NPCs don't get there, right? So true spirituality is not about acquiring special powers. It's not about collecting mystical experiences, seeing Aztec pyramids on the wall, or escaping life's difficulties. It's about seeing reality clearly, including impermanence, suffering, and the illusion of a separate self, and responding with basically the virtues like wisdom, compassion, and essentially liberation. So it is the lived process of aligning one's life with higher values, like I mentioned. Other ones might include love, truth, beauty, humility, and compassion, although these through disciplined practice, self-inquiry, and direct insight rather than borrowed rituals or feel-good concepts is what spirituality is. So let us turn our awareness for a moment to something that is considered by the Buddha to be fake spirituality or performative spirituality. The kind of thing that drives people away, right? So the example we have is tarot readings, right? This is one of the practices which goes nowhere and doesn't really have any validity to it. Personally, I actually laugh at people that do this, and I shouldn't. I really shouldn't, but I also, while I'm laughing, I usually feel quite concerned for people who take tarot cards seriously, because I can do tarot readings without the cards, just based on raw data, like of being highly observant to everything coming from a specific person I'm around, right? And that's based on instincts more than any kind of idea or mental abstraction or apparent divine judgment or hocus pocus.
I haven't got time for this Mickey Mouse bullshit!
Or nonsense, right? Which is ultimately just ego games, right? So consider this: who wins, a pile of cards in the hands of someone who believes himself to be psychic, or someone who has spent over a decade honing their instincts with strenuous physical discipline and practice, deep philosophical scholarship, communing with nature, and immersing so far into their physical practices and disciplines that they have achieved essentially what could be termed non-physical insight or spiritual insight, and that's what's emerged out of that. So, who would win, right? It's pretty obvious. A very basic example of what I'm talking about, the non-physical insight, is this. So, when you're out in nature, and you sense something looking at you from a specific direction, which you do not sense with any physical five senses, right? You turn, you see, oh, there's someone there, or oh, there's an animal there, or whatever that was looking at you, that was watching you, and that is the most easily understandable beyond physical sense perception that people can be introduced to. And tarot readers, like they don't have that ability. That's the most basic one, and they don't have it because they're essentially a performer, right? And they're not actually in touch with themselves, the world, God, or anything resembling the Great Mystery or the Primordial Tao, right? So essentially, tarot practitioners, they identify and they adopt a persona or a mask, which is that of a highly intuitive person or a psychic person who knows things mysteriously out of nowhere, right? But speaking from experience as a former spiritual teacher who's seen everything, and I was a teacher of the actual practices and aspects of spirituality that have utility and truth, if they were really that intuitive, they would, in most cases, not be performing tarot or even be in a situation like that socially, because they would be experiencing sensory overload, among other things, and they would seek solitude, right? And it's pretty clear which practitioner is spiritual and which is performing in the example, isn't it? It's like saying, who wins, a Shaolin monk or a fucking idiot LARPing as a witch that has a bunch of cards, right? It's pretty fucking funny. Like, anyway, the bad reputation that spirituality gets often comes from people who are using tools like tarot to compensate for traits or virtues that they lack. There's a great deal of ego traps that people fall into on the spiritual path. And generally speaking, most people in their lives, like most people who you talk to that are normal, have been spooked or pushed away from spirituality due to an encounter with someone like the tarot reader example, who's claiming to be spiritual but is actually performing and not a serious practitioner, which generally, naturally drives people away from the benefits of which there are many to truly valid paths that have liberated a great many people over the centuries. Let's see what I'm talking about here. So let's look at one Bible verse, just one. We're not going to look at more than one because the Bible's boring most of the time, but just one verse. So here it is. If any man come to me and hate not his father and mother and wife and children and brethren and sisters, yea, and his own life also, he cannot be my disciple. Luke 14:26. So what did Christ mean by this, right? This means essentially if you do not reject your beliefs, your ego, your group identity, and way of life completely, then you cannot be his disciple, right? This is crucial because although the verse is not complete according to my standards, it is close. In terms of spirituality and awareness, basically the only thing you can be absolutely certain exists is yourself. And this is not to say the one who talks has a name, was born in a certain place in the world, but I'm talking about the big S, the capital S, the self, like the big one. What this means is different depending on your level of study, contemplation, and meditation. But yes, there are levels to understanding these things, there are levels of truth. And fundamentally something can be true in one level but false on another as well. So for now, if we consider the pre-ego self to be the self, or in other words, you before you could talk, or better yet, you as a spirit who incarnates as different people across time in different lives with different languages, families, experiences overall, right? It makes sense that Christ needed his disciples to be free of the mundane illusions of the world. In this case, it's the material existence he's mostly talking about. And this is identical to Maya from Buddhism, essentially meaning illusion or veil, which is what the Buddha realized about the apparent external world initially, that it was not real or true. And we know this today because according to science, atoms are 99.99% nothing, right? And that's the physical material world right there. So, yeah. Returning to the topic, spirituality is fundamentally actually the least bullshit thing in society. It is at its core self-inquiry and investigation into your own nature, and by extension the world also. Walking the spiritual path just means figuring out what is actually going on beyond all that you've experienced or been told is true by other people. And actually daring, like the penguin meme, the Faustian penguin from my Agartha edit, to actually discover the truth of your own spirit and of creation itself at large. A funny thing about that is everyone's like, basically it's a bunch of normies looking at the penguin and being like, oh, I'm the penguin, but honestly, like, I'm one of the few people that can actually say, yeah, I am actually the penguin. I've gone way beyond what that fucking penguin's done. Because, I've died... Just to give you guys an idea, and it will sound strange, but I've died 10 times in this life, right? So I've actually died and come back 10 times. And you might be like, how are you still here? It's like, it's private information, but I have died, come back 10 times in this life. Never mind the other ones. Anyway, moving on. So the most startling aspect of spirituality, as you know what it is now, is that it is endless because you're God. What this means is, to sum it up and make it super simple for you all to understand, is if we're in a movie right now, then God is the same actor playing different characters as far as we know this is true. So if you're every possible character that can exist all at once, you could say that the only person who achieved such a thing in history that we know of was the Buddha, basically. So to wrap this up a little bit, like a little neat little package, spirituality from my perspective as having been a spiritual teacher, it follows very ancient principles, and there are many, but ultimately the various schools of spirituality come to the same conclusions in many cases, at least the ones that are worth their salt. So basically, spirituality, when you do not cling to dogmas, beliefs, groupthink, delusions, or identity, you actually, when you put everything aside to discover what the hell is going on, like what is the world actually like, what am I actually like, what is the truth of the world, what is the truth of the self, and you get answers to the hard questions, then it's like, from what I know, after over it's been about 2 decades of study and practice right so far, is that spirituality is the destruction of all that you're not. From my own spiritual discipline and path, it involves awareness above all else, so that with your awareness you can burn all illusions and do naturally what you're meant to do with the time that is given to you, right? That's about it. But like, you guys will know more about it when the book comes out. But it's whatever. But anyway, I hope that clears things up regarding what spirituality is. I had to start with this as an introduction of sorts to like the videos we'll be making. But like the channel name will be changing soon as well. I already have a name chosen already, and I just need to do some checks. Then we're good to go. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy. I hope that clears things up. Again, like spirituality has nothing to do with religion. I have pretty much studied every religion that there is, but managed to take the things from them that are of use and are actually true. So yeah. Anyway, thanks guys for watching. I'll see you in the next one, and peace out. Boop, boop.